Hello, I'm Citrus, and you're looking at the Reborn 100 Dijeh. This kit came out in 2015 and it retails for 3,500 yen, which is about the price of a mid-lower range master grade. I haven't had a chance to top coat this guy yet because the weather has been freezing lately. So as you may have noticed in the spin around, there's some weirdly shiny spots on the kit. And that's something that I did, not anything wrong with the plastic of the kit itself. And the reason why I did it is to improve the decal adhesion. I'll probably make a separate video for the technique, but the idea is basically that you buff the plastic down as smooth as you can so that the decal adhesive on the clear stickers can grip to as much plastic as possible. And this way, because the decal can stick down better, you see less air bubbles underneath, and the edges of the decal blend in better with the plastic, so it looks more similar to a water slide. I mean, you can still kind of see the edges, but it definitely helps the effect. Okay, so before I forget, here's a size comparison with the Dijeh and the Rick Diaz. Both of these guys are from Zeta Gundam as sort of supporting character mobile suits. I think with this one, detailing this is a pretty heavy requirement, because if you don't, the whole thing looks kind of boring. I mean, the sculpting is there's a lot of interesting surface details on this thing, but if you don't highlight it with a little bit of paint or panelizing, it doesn't really show up very well. And as for the build itself, it's pretty basic, pretty linear. If you take a Revive high grade and you basically scale it up to 1/100, you get what this is. So nothing really gimmicky on the inside. But of course, the results on the outside, there's no arguing with that. It looks fantastic. Bandai went to a lot of effort to make this look as good as it can right out of the box. And there are basically no seam lines to deal with, except for this seam line on top of the shoulder here, and in the middle of the backpack on the back. Both of those are pretty easy to deal with. Of course, I also mentioned in the build video that tons of all the parts are all undergated, so you don't really have to worry about prepping the outside surface too much other than doing your usual sanding or whatever to help your paint adhesion. Now, just because the construction is simple doesn't mean the articulation is lacking. You have a pretty decent shoulder joint in here that you typically would see on master grades. A pretty decent elbow. And I mentioned this in the build video as well, but I really like that bit right there where the elbow joint gets pulled into the arm. Ball jointed shoulder bits there on this side, and this one is just hinged up and down, and nothing really in the waist. You see some pretty good side to side action, but forwards and back it's not too much going on, and definitely not much rotation at all, because this red piece goes into the waist, and this is attached to the waist, so that pretty much locks up everything in there. Skirts move out of the way pretty well. Getting them back in shape together so that they all line up is a little bit tricky, but they all sit in there just fine, not going to come off. Have a pretty decent hip joints and 90-degree bend in the knee there just because of how the leg is shaped. Now you heard a pop right there, and that is this cable coming out. So at the back of the leg you can see there's a hook, and this is supposed to stay inside there. There's a little bit of a catch at the end, but if you don't hold this cable in place as you're bending it, it's very easy for the cable to pop out the top of the leg. So that's just something to keep in mind when you are posing this. So if I hold it in place, you can see it bends with the leg properly. And down in the ankles, there's a polycap that slides left and right to give you a bit more range in how much you can rotate it side to side, because as you can see, there's not that much space in there, and it comes all the way down. The joints are like all the way up here. So that does help, so you can have it in like a straight up vertical position. And if you move it to the right all the way, you get about, what is that, like 15, 20-ish degrees maybe. It's not a lot. You're not going to get like wide-legged poses out of this with feet flat on the ground, but it does help a little bit. On the back of the kit, the wing pods can rotate and the thrusters can move around on their own, and these can go in and out just a little bit. You're also supposed to be able to pull out the wing pods to reveal a flattened portion of the peg for you to hang the weapons on. But the polycap isn't seated very securely inside of this housing, so you're more than likely going to pull the whole thing out with the polycap. I recommend gluing the polycap down, but be very careful that you don't leave the peg inside while you do that, so that you don't also glue this down in place inadvertently. As for accessories, you get a pair of open hands and another pair of open fists for holding the accessories. And the weapons that you get are a clay bazooka, which is recycled from the Hyakushiki without any ammunition in the clip, unfortunately, due to, I guess, budget cuts for a not master grade, and a beam rifle, which looks really quite good. So there's the hook, and you can see push it down. So when the hook is folded down, the handle stays in place, which is really good, so it's not going to lean downwards when it's just in the hand. Lots of pieces in the construction of this thing, so it's a pretty involved build actually. I enjoyed putting it together quite a lot. And the last accessory is the beam Naginata, which in my opinion is kind of like a throwaway. I know they include this because it obviously used this in the show, but the effect parts look pretty crappy, and I don't really like how they look. The handle is also really thin. The peg doesn't sit in the open hand very well, and as I'll demonstrate for you here, when you put it into the hand with the peg, it's not really in there very tightly, and it just comes right off. So altogether, I think 3,500 yen is kind of like a cursed price tag, because any kit that costs that much is always going to be in the shadow of these fantastic kits that Bandai made years and years ago. And when new builders join the scene, they don't really have much reason to pick up a new kit that will give them less of an experience than an older kit if they don't have to, right? They're always going to buy the 2.0s that have so much more mechanical detail and everything. But this is definitely not one to pass up. In the MG Rick Diaz review, I said it was a painter's kit and not really a builder's kit. And in a lot of ways, the same is true here with the Reborn 100 Dijeh. Because the construction of it is relatively straightforward and simple, you're not going to be super impressed when you put this guy together. But that said, it's a really good looking kit just right out of the box, and with just the tiniest bit of work painting in a few details, it'll look amazing. For newer builders to the scene, you're probably better off spending your 3,500 yen on something like a Zaku or a GM or something like that. It's going to be more involved and more interesting to put together. But for those of you who've already built those kits, then this is something pretty nice to pick up. So that's all for this review. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.